Hello, welcome to a meeting of the Education Subcommittee of the Baltimore City Delegation. We are small but mighty today. and we are there is a lot going on in terms of education funding. And so we wanted to just get some quick updates. So there are folks in each district of the House of the Delegation in Baltimore who know the plan, who know what's going on, who know where things stand. Of course, we did an override of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future veto. Really exciting, and understand that there's more legislation on the way as well. So we have Delegate Tony Bridges and Delegate Delia Tar with us. Our chair of the delegation is also here, and we are delighted to have Chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee, Maggie McIntosh, to talk to us a little bit about what is going on, where things stand, and answer any questions that anyone might have. So thanks so much for joining us, Maggie. And I'm going to turn it over to you to just sort of tell us where things are right now.
Sure. I got a couple of things that I wanted to kind of talk with you about, if you don't mind. One is, you're absolutely right. We have done a really good thing by overriding the veto, and the relief plan. It had $150 million for K through 12, 100 of which is to pay for that over to get the blueprint started. Hi, Chanel. Good to see you. So, we've done a lot this session, but we're just now meeting. As a matter of fact, Ways and Means and folks from start meeting about a bill we're going to call fondly the Blueprint 2 or Kerwin 2. And it really is, well, there's some dates in that override that we have to correct, that it's impossible for to meet because it was vetoed and therefore delayed. But there's some other things that we need to address too. As an example, we need to make clear in the bill that the concentrations of poverty, which is something that Baltimore City is very interested in, can begin at 80%, which is not in the budget. So we want to make it clear in the bill, the policy bill, that it should. And by the way, that 150 million will pay for it at 80%. So, schools that are 80% impacted by poverty will start getting more than just their grants. They'll start getting some per pupil funding beginning in July, which is terrific. And it ramps up, and that ramping up will be, I think, because of the veto, but the fact that we've overridden it, I don't think the adjustment will be much. I think any adjustment I have heard will be beneficial to Baltimore City schools and to Prince George's and other counties that have a high concentration of poverty kids in their classrooms. There'll be a number of other things in that bill, possibly. That is where some of the digital learning kind of stuff is going to go. Although I think that might still be a separate bill from Delegate Washington, the Vice Chair of Ways and Means, has been working on that. But that'll be forthcoming. We're beginning to work on it now. And there'll be a number of things that we will have to do to get the blueprint going. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that the accountability board, which is very important in the blueprint, the governor flatly refused to fund it. We asked him, would he cover this in the supplemental? No. We are going to have to find another vehicle to fund that, and we're going to be approaching Ways and Means to look for actually a bill that they have that might be appropriate funding mechanism, and that would be sports betting. But don't go run back and tell your chair that yet, because she probably doesn't know it. I'm just telling you before she knows it, that we're going to be talking to her about possibly including a little bit of money for the accountability board for the blueprint. Um, a couple of other things that I just wanted to mention that we've been talking to staff about, DLS, to Rachel specifically. The governor funded a lot of stuff out of the blueprint money, which it was appropriate, it was fine. And then the supplemental bill that came down from the governor, the 150 that starts up the blueprint, we took it out of the blueprint fund. One of the things that we're talking about that I'm going to try to get out in front and promote is with all this federal money that's coming in, I'm told that Maryland could get as much as 3.9, almost $4 billion out of the Biden bill. Very appropriate to use some of that money to repay the blueprint fund. So that is something we're going to look to try to talk to the governor about. And in fact, have it in some form in legislation to guide him to repay that money. And what would that do? I mean, believe it or not, right now the blueprint is easily paid for through FY25 into FY26. We could actually get the blueprint paid for into FY27, which would be in to get that done this year. So that is something that I'm going to kind of take the lead on trying to get the governor's office to do. If you don't mind, I want to talk about debt. Is that all right, Delegate Lehrman? Yeah. I think you're on mute. She looked like she said yeah.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah. I'm going to be talking to this group, Baltimore City delegates interested in education. I want to talk about debt. Funny thing happened on the way through the Kerwin Commission to me. Someone who's been around for a while, and someone who some of the actions that I'm about ready to talk to you about. I realized, kind of for the first time, bugged me, but it was in the back of my head, that Baltimore City Schools, unlike any other school district in this, has to pay a lot of debt. Nobody else has to pay that, So, and I've seen it on one of the reasons that Fox 45 says that they're top heavy, administrative, this, that, and the other, because let's just say roughly at some point or another about $50 million that they have to pay in debt. And you say, well, what the heck? Well, here's the debt is. It's debt that has accumulated because we haven't, in my view, needs of our school district, Baltimore City, okay? We haven't supported the capital needs. There have been a couple of times where Baltimore City Schools has been more than desperate, has been backed up against the many failures in systems and buildings and issues with the capital program that they have come to the legislature and said help. And we helped them. But I did not realize fully at the time where we are now. And let me give you an example. Next year, because of the blueprint, Baltimore City will be getting approximately 54, 52, 53, $54 million more to spend in our schools. Off the top of the per pupil spending, when the money comes in from the state, is $50 million. Is getting more money through the blueprint. We're still trying to get, And if you ask yourself the question, why is it our schools don't have these after school programs that other schools have? Why have, the modern computers or the labs or the this, that, and the other? Why is it we don't have? Well, it's because over the last 20 years, we have asked the kids and the teachers to give up money that should have been going into the classroom. So our kids are paying for bricks. Our school's paying for bricks. Tutoring, wraparound services, after school services, so on and so forth. The only people that got hurt, the children, only ones. And every year, I would say something like, well, that's an awful lot of debt. The school system's going to get more money next year. They can afford to pay it. But no other district pays debt. Now, are you ready for this?
I lost you.
Can you hear me? All right.
Yeah,
That's all
there
right.
you go.
No other school district in the pays the kind of debt that Baltimore City does, unless they have the ability to raise local school tax. So you go to Pennsylvania, those school districts carry debt, but they also send out tax bills to all the citizens in their town. They raise taxes, they raise fees.
Right.
People pay for the schools.
Right.
Our school can't do that. The only school district in the country that carries and pays debt without being able to pay for it. How did we get here? Two things happened. When the Bridge to Excellence passed under Howard Pete Rollins, and it basically moved the school system out of city government. It was needed. It was the right thing to do. Chairman Rawlings was afraid that the city would retaliate and not pay for any capital costs. Okay? He was just worried about it. And so they gave the school district, our schools, the ability to sell bonds, to actually levy debt, to pay, different things along the way. And then every couple, 3 years, they up that. The people who, and by the way, Senator McFadden is the one who helped them increase their debt because they were drowning in broken roofs and needed the money and couldn't get it from the city in that case, and couldn't. So they needed to fix these buildings. Very well intentioned. It was very well intentioned. I'm not being critical of Senator McFadden. But over the years, that debt now is coming due, and it's $20 million a year they've been carrying. It's 100 that is due by FY26, $110 million. Then we did the famous deal schools, and we asked the city to pay 20, the state to pay 20, and we said to the kids of Baltimore and those, we're going to take $20 million out of your classroom. So there's another 20. So that's 40 million. And then there was one of the members a few years ago that shifted more money that the city was supposed to be paying for the 21st century schools, $50 million. Now, I'm raising this as an issue because I think that over a period of time, the poorest school division, the poorest schools with the highest number of kids in poverty, has had $50 million taken each year to pay for school construction and really wasn't even school construction. It's to pay for systemic problems to the buildings. It's crises that arose in buildings where they absolutely needed help. I think maybe the school for design school was one school that may have been renovated under that. But this is a problem that I think we need to think about this year, certainly next year or in years to come. How is it we continue this?
Yeah.
And, you know, Brooke, Delegate, I know you, and I know that I've heard you many times talk about the cost of being poor, you know? And
Yep. Yep.
yeah, who the very day that I got, I mean, really, the very week we went in to get, you know, I got zero financing because I have good credit and I have a steady job and have had, you know, I've got a good credit rating. He's a vet and he got out and he, even though he's held good into problem, he's had problems with alcohol, he's had problems with drugs. And so the prime is the same. His interest rate, they wanted to charge him 9%. 9%.
Crazy. Yeah.
Same prime
Yep.
rate.
Just come back. It just
It's the
compounds the
cost of being
problem
poor.
over and over.
Yeah.
Yep. It is. It is.
It does make me look back over the years and think about the times that the Baltimore City CEOs or and yelled mismanagement of money and mismanagement of this. How many of them really were mismanaging? Just we're kind of refusing to hurt the kids anymore and take
Hmm.
more stuff out of the classroom.
Yeah.
And it does much of because that's
Yeah.
what happens when poor families screw up and go into foreclosure. We say, well, they can't.
Yeah.
It's hard to manage your money when you're paying those kinds of interest rates. So that's my little thing that I think that is something I just want to bring up in addition to, you know, all the great work we're doing and will do. But I do think that the city delegation at some point needs to focus on this issue of debt and making sure that that $50 million gets into the classroom for after school, for tutoring, for wraparound services. That's money. It's a lot of money.
Yep. It is.
That's it.
Well, that was great. That was really helpful and interesting. Questions? Any questions from anyone about where things are or next steps? Anything? Delegate Bridges, you look like you're approaching to unmute. Delegate Branch, go ahead.
Well, I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to take the time just to say thank you, Delegate McIntosh, for that brief history lesson, because me being new, that was really, really good knowing a lot of what's going on. So it does make me think, differently when thinking about Baltimore City Public Schools and how poor they've been doing, and now knowing why. It just gives me just a place where I can now start to do my research. So just thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. And I really do believe that that actually I'll give credit where credit's due. Alex Hughes was in a meeting, we're all sitting around, and Alex said that. And I looked over and it was, well, because, you know, he needed stuff. All right. But you know, these were decisions we made here. Here you have to uh, think and rethink. Okay.
Yep, it's a good point. It's a good point. One other issue that we didn't talk too much about, but that is handled in the blueprint itself, but and that folks should keep in mind as well, is this how we count kids in poverty and the direct certification. Versus, so I don't know, Delegate McIntosh, if you want to just take like 1 minute to talk to folks about that issue. It affects our school district quite a lot because we have schools that have a high percentage of kids who are undocumented or their families are undocumented, where in some other school districts, they're more dispersed. So
I
oh,
think the
froze.
blueprint too
There you go.
may try to, I did, I know. You froze too.
Yeah.
Too, may try to undo that, but there's a model in New York. Am I right, Brooke? Is it the New York model we want to follow? Is it the
Yeah,
New York model
they
we
do
don't want to
forms in
follow?
New
Which is
York.
it?
Yeah, they do forms in New York. And then also, I think in the blueprint itself, we did adopt a better formula than what we have right now, or a better way of counting. It just was not in
Right. And
place because of the veto in time for the governor's budget this year. So he didn't use what we had
right.
passed last year.
And we are using forms. Okay. I think in the final analysis, we tried every model. We looked at several states and we basically said schools have got to get kids to fill out forms. And it's difficult because of the undocumented population who are very fearful about filling out forms. And I understand completely, but there's got to be, I think, in these schools where we have high numbers of undocumented, they're also, and so the community school person in those schools has got to establish a relationship, as they do, with the family, those communities, to get their trust to say, look, this form gets us more after school programming. It gets us more counseling. It gets us more wraparound services. It gets us an art teacher, a music teacher, whatever it is that the school needs. That's it. But that has been a tremendous challenge, and one that, frankly, I think was one of the last decisions the Kerwin Commission made because of how you know delicate it was and how critical it was for Baltimore
Yep.
and several counties, Eastern Shore
Yep.
counties that have
Yep.
undocumented citizens.
Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Delegate Bridges?
Delegate Lamb.
Yeah.
So with those forms though, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought they weren't gonna go into effect for like another year that they would have to use the form.
Yeah, I think that's right. They have time. Right now, they're just doing a look back of several years and then they'll move into the forms. That's my understanding too.
Yeah, but I get it. Like those forms, it's still a tough sell for, undocumented, especially, as I look at, the 41st district and the fact that we got community organizers and, 21st century schools and folks in those schools that are doing their best to reach out to communities. The need is there, and they definitely don't, they still don't want to use those documents. So
Yeah,
those forms.
yeah, it's hard. Great. Any other
It's
questions?
very difficult.
So I'm sorry. I
Sorry.
just wanted to know how come the forms aren't done on the front end, like doing school registration versus at the back end and trying to play catch up. I think if the approach was different, meaning if the forms were given on the front end saying this is a part of your school registration, then maybe we'd be able to document it a lot better. But I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. But I was just wondering if that could be a possibility.
Yeah, I think you're right, Delegate Branch, and I suspect that that's the way that we'll be moving towards, is that it'll just be another piece of paper in your packet that has to be filled out. As we all know, because we filled out all those forms when you enroll your child. But so a lot of the forms you fill out once when you first enroll your kid in city schools, and then like you don't have to fill out very many forms each year. And this will be one that you have to fill out each year going forward. But yeah. Delegate Attar, is there any questions or thoughts?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Delegate McIntosh, and I echo what Delegate Branch said. This is extremely helpful, and it changes our view on how we look at things. I do need to get off for another meeting, so I
Yep.
wanted to thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all again.
So it's good to see you.
You too.
Well, great. Thank you so much for the overview and the briefing. Really helpful for folks in all the different districts in the city to know what's going on, so we can take it back to our own, the other members that we serve with as well if they have questions. So thank you, and we'll see you all on a future Zoom or WebEx screen shortly.
Take care.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Take care. Good night.